Well, joining us now, Wilfran Moufouma Okia is the head of regional climate prediction at WMO, which has come out with this report. Thanks, Mr. Okia, very much for being with us. I think the first question is a basic one. What is the likely impact or the potential impact of a rise up to 1.5 degrees or more for billions across the world?
Thank you very much for having me. So first of all, we need to go back to 2018, where a UN body called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, produced a report on the impact of a warming of 1.5 and what it means for region. So to be short, what is happening if we were to reach 1.5, it would be worse than today in terms of extreme, in terms of consequences. So reaching 1.5 is not a good news for the whole planet. And of course, 1.5 is the average for the whole planet, meaning there will be regions where the temperature will be very high than that number. Arctic is one, and there are other regions in the world.
Mr. Okia, specifically, what can this rise in temperatures mean, for example, for people over here in India? Would it be economic losses, a potential health crisis? What could it actually be?
The impact will be diverse. Perhaps a best analogy is to remind you of last year. Last year, we were supposed to be in a La Nina regime, let's say in a regime where the rise of temperature is kind of slowed down. And you can remember the extreme heat, some flooded in many regions of the world, including India. So that was in the case of a low temperature. Now, let's imagine what the report is saying is that the global warming, so the anthropogenic impact of human activity, combined with El Nino, will make the next 5 years being extremely hot. So it will be more worse than today. So essentially, we need to be prepared in different levels. But I think essentially for us is to make sure that our national Met services are able to provide us with the best alert system. So they need to have observation, they need to have capacity, so at least we can indicate to our government what is coming.
And Mr. Okia, I mean, I'm going through the report. There is an El Nino phenomena which is expected this year, the impact of which will be felt next year. So how is that combination of that El Nino effect and human factors together what the real concern is? I think that's the key point, because it's not just the El Nino, which is a phenomena which has always been there on our planet. It's when you combine a heating event caused by the El Nino with human factors that result in this crisis, right?
Yes. So first of all, maybe one thing to remember is that every decade are becoming warmer and warmer because of the climate change, right? So that's the trend. We are increasing the temperature. Now, El Nino will surge the temperature because when we have El Nino, the ocean release some temperature in the atmosphere. That will add up to the trend in the background. So basically, the temperature globally will be warmer, and that's very damaging for the society.
And what are the other key point I noticed is precipitation patterns around the world will be quite erratic. So some areas will have a great deal of rainfall, other areas will not. Firstly, where are the areas that you are likely to see a greatest variation from what the normal should be? And secondly, would you be able to tell us over here in India and in the Indian subcontinent what we may face?
Okay, thank you again. So basically, we need to be a bit cautious when it comes to the geographical impact of those forecasts, because first, those forecasts are meant to provide us with a global picture, because the weather is global. Now, also, in many regions of the world, what matters is the start of the rainy season, the end of the rainy season. So sometimes a global average doesn't mean anything, right? So basically, essentially, what the report is showing is that there are regions, if we pick North America, for instance, North Eurasia, there'll be an increase of precipitation over yearly. In some other region, let's say Australia, there'll be some deficit, and the same for the Amazonia. Now, to have a detailed picture of what is coming over India, we need the Indian National Met Services to refine that information, which is global, so at least they can pinpoint to the regional detail.
And sir, the other concern which you've raised is the extraordinary pace of Antarctic ice melting. How does that represent a huge problem for us? Because a rise in the level of sea waters will result in coastal flooding. It's bound to take place. And then add to that the dangers of warmer oceans on island territories, on coral formations, on the livelihood of millions, and on biodiversity in coastal regions. It's all interconnected, and we don't perhaps talk about this enough.
Yes, thank you. That's an interesting point to raise, and I think we should be talking much about this. Just one thing to reiterate here. With the global warming, we have an increase of the acidification. So the ocean become more acid, so which is killing coral. That's one. Now, interestingly, Arctic is one of the regions where the warming is much more important than anywhere. So this will cause to some flooding in some coastal area. So this is very important to think about it and to factor it.
And Mr. Okia, one of the concerns which we face in the Indian subcontinent is the phenomenal pace of glacial melt. We are dependent, billions are dependent in this region on water or rivers which come from freshwater sources from the Himalayas. But the speed of glacial melt means that there are other problems. For example, flooding takes place, and the sources of fresh water could ultimately disappear much faster than we want it to. So is this also a key concern which people in our region, in my region, could potentially face in the future?
I think this is a concern for the whole world. We need to be all paying attention to this. Everyone needs to act at its level. So we at the World Meteorological Organization, our role is to make sure we can collaborate with all the countries to provide the government with the best available climate information, right? Now, that happens at the planetary scale. At regional level, there need to be some collaboration. But more importantly, we need to have institutions, experts at national level capable of designing some strategies. That's where we need to have everyone working together.
Mr. Okia, a lot of people will say on the basis of reading your report that, look, we might rise to 1.5 degrees or a little bit more, but then, chances are it might come down as well. It's not as if it's going to remain stuck at 1.5. But there's a problem in actually saying that, because the point is we need a long-term solution. So it's not enough to say that, oh no, we'll touch 1.5, it's not going to be a big deal, it's going to come down. It has to be sustained at a much lower level.
Yes. So actually, again, you nailed it. So just to give you an example, the past 3 years we were in a La Nina regime, as I indicated. It's supposed to be a cooling, right? What we notice every 5 years or every 10 years, all La Nina are getting warmer. So essentially, even if we have a phenomenon like La Nina, which is kind of slowing down, but the overall temperature is going up, right? So again, we need to do something to cut down the emission at some point.
Right. Well, Mr. Okia, these are matters of huge concern. And a final question to you. At 2 degrees, right, beyond the temperatures now, it begins to get irreversible, right? That there will be irreversible damage. And that is what we don't want to get to at all.
Yes, so let's not speak about irreversibility because that's maybe something we can argue. But one simple fact is that the report produced by the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, they compare a world of 2 degrees versus a world of 1.5, or to be short, a world of 1.5 is worse than today. A world of 2 degrees is worse than the 1.5. So every half degree of warming is causing more damaging. So we don't need to get there, if we can.
Right. Well, Mr. Okia, these are all worrying signs, and I think it's important that we address the climate issues that you talk about and global warming in the manner that it deserves. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing that report and the details with us.
Bye.